I was surprised as I began to put my videos into some playlists for y'all that one, there had been only the one poem, and even more surprisingly, so little Spanish literature written in Spanish. Um, Perhaps because for the last 2 years in Honduras and Mexico, I have been swimming in literature in Spanish. I sort of naturally sort of drifted away from it a bit here of late, but let me bring myself and you back to some wonderful Spanish with a amazing poem by Gabriela Mistral. I'm gonna read it to you. So this is a prepared video. Some of you enjoy those, and now some of the format is dictated by the venue. I don't know what the website in which it appears, which is poemanalysis.com. I did several poems for them. And without further ado, here we go. In 1945, Gabriela Mistral Lucila Godoy Alcayaga won the Nobel Prize for Literature. She was only the fourth woman to win the award, and, perhaps even more importantly, she was the first Latin American writer to win the prize. She did well indeed for a poet who had to leave school at 15 to care for her ailing mother. Some indication of Mistral's favorite themes can be gleaned from the titles she gives her collections: Sonnets of Death, Desolation, Tenderness, and Feeling. In the poem, Give Me Your Hand, the theme is fleeting, intimacy, and dance. The theme is supported by the rhythm of the poem as well as its repetitions, especially in the sonorous end line conclusion, y nada más. There follows a reading of the full poem. I believe my translation into English, if memory serves, but you'll get most of them in the sections, which are key poem information, read poem, summary, detail analysis, structure and form, more about Gabriela Mistral, frequently asked questions, and comments. So that is the format that's set up by Poem Analysis. So we'll begin with summary. Except for the figure of hope, the poem selected has fewer hermetic elements than some of Mistral's poems. The nature imagery is fairly straightforward. The poem's form is also simple. It consists of 3 rhymed quatrains. Although the lines vary in the number of feet, Mistral manages to create a musical rhythm to the poem as befits a poem about dance. The end lines of the first 2 stanzas in Spanish begins with the simile como, like, a flower, like a blade of grass, and the third stanza's end line begins on a hill. Then each end line concludes y nada más, and nothing more. Nothing more could mean very little, but it could also contain very, very much life, like in a little seed. Detailed analysis. Stanza 1, give me your hand and give me your love. Give me your hand and dance with me. A single flower and nothing more. A single flower is all will be. In Spanish, each line contains 10 syllables except the last, which contains 9. This missing last syllable in the 4th line creates a feeling of being cut off, akin to the feeling of frustration when faced with a truncated possibility of being more than a single flower, perhaps a cut flower. The ABAB rhyme scheme is less oblique in the original Spanish. The translation does a good job of capturing the repetition at the beginning of the first 2 lines, give me your hand, and again on the 3rd and 4th, a single flower. The rhymes thus link every other line, while the repetitions link sequential lines, creating a nice weaving rhythm like that described by dancers in a contradance, or the stomp of feet in contretemps with the twirling of the kerchief in Chile's national dance, La Cuenca. I remind you that Gabriela Mistral is Chilean. There is another, they also have another poet laureate in Neruda. There's another level of interconnection in the first 3 lines of this stanza in Spanish. Each ends with a verb in the future tense. Danzaremos, amarás, seremos. We will dance, you will love, we will be. The subjects of these verbs do not need to be stated in Spanish. The predicate verb, being, moves to the last line in translation. The last line in Spanish ends as a flower, nothing more, and that nada más, nothing more, ends each of the stanzas in the Spanish. The bigger issue in the translation is not just changing you will love to the more passive your love, but moving that your love to the first line and sliding we will dance into the second line. The Spanish poem puts dancing, not love, first. Stanza 2, keeping time to dance together, ... grass in the wind is all will be. The second stanza varies more in the number of syllables per line, but other than that, follows the pattern of the first in Spanish, with every other line rhyming and sequential lines having repeated beginnings. The translation departs here in the first two lines. Keeping time is unrhymed, with you'll be singing, whereas in Spanish the first two lines begin el mismo and al mismo, the same at the same. The first three lines in Spanish end with verbs in the future tense. Cantaremos, bailarás, ondularemos. We will sing, you will dance, we will wave. The last line ends nada más, nothing more. The long Spanish verb for waving creates the longest line in the stanza. In Spanish, it hangs out there at the end of the line like something waving in the wind. Grass, in the translation, evokes a field or a patch at least, whereas espiga, blade, in the Spanish, maintains the isolated nature of the images, one flower, one blade. The translators dropped verso from line 1 and paso, step, from line 2, which is a pity because it reinforced the linking of dance and poetry. I apologize. This looks like I'm commenting someone else's translation. Again, the translator has chosen to invert the actions of the first two lines from singing and dancing in Spanish to dancing and singing in English. But the change here is not as important as it was in establishing the first action of the poem in stanza 1, line 1. We will dance. Translators do often have to tweak syntax in translation, particularly in verse. Pity them. Yes, I did translate it myself. I remember to see how I felt about the translation given, and I will find out where I got that translation and put it in the comments for you. So the only verb to end a line in this stanza in Spanish is in the second line, olvidarás, you will forget. Line 1 begins as in the translation, I'm your called, although I am you are, or my your name is, or are more colloquial in English. Rosa and Esperanza, hope, create a nice internal rhyme in Spanish that is not possible to replicate in translation. These are both female names in Spanish. The two main translation issues in the stanza concern the forgetting and the going free. Losing instead of forgetting is not unreasonable as a translation, but in Spanish it is only the you who forgets, olvidarás, not the implied we of are. This is important. Also, there is nothing in the original Spanish about going free, the only mention of a hill. The unwarranted addition of going free creates a feeling of either some freeing, Dionysian abandon in the dance that I do not think Mistral intended, or there is a sense of relief in escaping the forgetting that I do not think is justified in the reading of the Spanish text. With regards to the hill that appears in the Spanish, we will be a dance on the hill. The Celtic folklore tradition contains fairy hills where mortals dance in trance for thousands of years, but a Chilean equivalent seems a real stretch. The will remains somewhat mysterious. Structure and form. This last comment about the poem's form is highly speculative. It is always dangerous to speak about what is not there. But given the three stanzas of 4 lines each, and given Mistral's history of writing sonnets, we can speculate whether a missing concluding heroic couplet is implied. What would that heroic couplet be saying? It can only really be saying that it is not there, surely. Something is missing. This highly speculative ending does have one merit, that it would echo the truncated sense of the first stanza's ending. There is a Baudelaire poem to a passerby about a fascinating fugitive beauty, a flash, a glance, which causes the poem to be reborn, a hurricane in the eye. Away, far from here, Baudelaire imagines, you who I would have loved, you who knew. Decades later, I remain unresolved about the end of that poem. Is there regret? Yet it is somehow sweet. Ailleurs, bien loin d'ici, jamais, trop tard peut-être, car j'ignore tu fuis, tu ne sais où je vais, ô toi que je savais, ô toi qui le savais, in the French. Une passante by Charles Baudelaire, who wrote Flowers of Evil, Fleur de Mal. This poem presents similar themes. Rose fades, but the speaker is hope. The names don't matter. The dance is all. Is there nothing more at the end of each stanza bitter? Is it as negative as Poe's Raven, nevermore? Or is it indeed satisfied? Nothing more is needed. Life is the dance, death the nothing more, in which names are erased. But it is not said that there will be no more dancing. More about Gabriela Mistral. Mistral's prose is sometimes contrasted with the more innate modernism of Rubén Darío. He did Azul. It was kind of a launching of modern poetry in Spanish. I believe he's Nicaraguan. Mistral unabashedly wrote children's poems, which she included in her collection, Tenderness. Mistral was a beloved teacher in Chile for 20 years. She considered this her Christian duty, and she has been described as apolitical, but she dedicated her book, Felling, to Basque children orphaned by the Spanish Civil War. The Nobel Committee praised Mistral for her lyric poetry. Mistral defined the lyric as a wound of love. She lost her great love very early in life. Her last work was entitled The Wine Press. 2 collections were published posthumously, Wine Press 2 and Poems of Chile. It is greatly to be regretted that she has been eclipsed in popularity by Chile's other poet to win the Nobel, Pablo Neruda. Nothing against Neruda, who I love, but I wish Gabriela Mistral was more well known. Perhaps it's confusing because there is another Mistral who won the Nobel Prize as well, Fideo Mistral, I want to say, who wrote in Provençal, form of French, a minority language spoken in a part of France. He wrote Mireo, but much earlier. He won much earlier than Gabriela. Final sentence here. There is surely room on the world's bookshelf for more than one outstanding Chilean poet. In her interest in legends, nature, children, religion, the vernacular, and pride of place, Mistral can be compared to another Nobel Literature laureate, Graciela de Leda from Sardinia. Please note, Gabriela Mistral is not to be confused with Frédéric Mistral, who won a Nobel for promotion of Provençal poetry. Oh, I jumped the gun there. Should have trusted in my own writing. I wrote this years ago now. FAQs. Was Gabriela Mistral just a teacher? No, Mistral has a long, illustrious career in education. She was even invited to help with education reform in Mexico. But she was also a diplomat who worked in support of various causes, such as the universal human rights of the child. What is the Spanish text of Give Me Your Hand? Dame la mano y danzaremos, dame la mano y me amarás, como una flor, seremos como una flor y nada más. El mismo verso cantaremos, al mismo paso bailarás, como una espiga ondularemos, como una espiga y nada más. Te llama Rosa y yo Esperanza, pero tu nombre olvidarás, porque seremos una danza en la colina y nada más. So there's that final hill, colina at the end, that the other translator erased. Last question, did Mistral write other poems about dancers? Yes, she wrote poems about dancers along with poems about other kinds of artists and performers, as well as about people in other less creative professions. In the Mad Woman section of the Wine Press, Mistral wrote another important dancer poem called La Bailarina. About dancers. Okay, that's it for today's poem, Give Me Your Hand by Gabriela Mistral, a Nobel laureate, literature laureate from Chile.